Hello everyone, welcome to Aitareya Institute and our daily current affairs series. I am Aditya Singh, and in this series we'll go beyond the headlines to understand the concepts, context and contextual understanding of things. We'll go into the constitutional, geographical, economic, environmental and even the international dimensions of every important issue. So our objective here is to connect current affairs with the static syllabus, previous year questions and the evolving demands of the UPSC civil services exams. All that will be covering up. So without any further delay, let's begin today's current affairs discussion. So the news, one of the important news which pertains to geography is your Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus. So we'll be discussing the overview, where exactly it is located, what is the geological formation. So Mount Olympus, one thing is that you have to note is that it is the highest mountain massif in Greece, and this is the location of Mount Olympus. This, okay, so this is in Greece. Okay, moreover, whenever you are seeing, I have deliberately put the map over here in order for you to realize that this is also what you also need to do while studying the static syllabus also, not just current affairs. Okay, so here you can observe that you have an agency. Agency is between your Turkey and Greece. So not just Mount Olympus, but you have to see and visualize the regional space of that location. Okay, and what all nations are bounding that country. So you have Albania, Macedonia, you have Bulgaria, and then obviously your Turkey. Okay, then here you have a sea of Marmara, sea of Marmara. Okay, so now you have to identify, this is your homework, this point and this point. What is the strait that is located over here? Okay, so one, okay, let me just tell you instead, and just pause the video and think what is the strait between Sea of Marmara and Aegean Sea and Sea of Marmara and Black Sea. Okay, so you have here Dardanelles, Dardanelles Strait. Okay, so this Dardanelles Strait is between Sea of Marmara and Aegean Sea. Very, very, very important. Okay, and this point, this is the famous Bosphorus Strait. Very, very, very important. Not just now, since the medieval history, since even the ancient history, and particularly medieval times, this strait became very important. It is important even till now. This is the area where you have around this Bosphorus Strait, you have the area, I'm sure you must have heard about this, Constantinople. Okay, Constantinople. Now, in world history, you must have read about Constantinople, how the capture of Constantinople led to the series of the navigation that started from the different European countries like England, okay, like France. They started because this was captured. So now they don't have that path. So they started looking around for alternate paths, and this is why they went towards the Cape of Good Hope and then entered towards the India. Okay, so that is the part of world history. I'm just mentioning it because I've seen this map. So all this you also have to recall as soon as you see the map. Okay, so this is how you should train yourself. Coming back to the discussion, first thing that you have to remember here is that this is the highest mountain massif in Greece. So this is the word renowned as the mythological home of Zeus and 12 Olympian gods featuring 52 distant peaks and deep gorges. Now you don't need to remember all this. Just that it is the highest mountain massif in Greece. That is it. Okay. Location, it is located in northern Greece. You can just simply remember that it is in Greece near the Gulf of Thermaic of the Aegean Sea. This is the Gulf of Thermaic. Okay. No, not that important, but just mentioning you. It straddles the administrative boundary between Macedonia and Thessaly. Highest peak, Mythikas Peak, at around 2,900 meters, the highest point in Greece, flanked by distinctive amphitheater like Throne of Zeus, Stephanie. Geological origin composed primarily of uplifted sedimentary limestone and dolomite. Okay, so this is uplifted. Now, this was found beneath an ancient ocean during the Triassic and Cretaceous period, thrust upwards by the, how is it formed? By tectonic collision of African and Eurasian plate. And since a tectonic collision is happening, this is why this region is also associated with seismicity, associated with earthquakes. And dramatic topographies. It rises from the sea level to nearly 3,000 meters in just 18 kilometers. And in just 18 kilometers, it sharply rises. Now, why is this happening? Because of the tectonic collision that has happened, creating sharp climate microzone from Mediterranean scrub to alpine tundra. Okay, you can read all this. In this, you just need to remember, since this topic is mainly associated with mapping, so you just need to remember the mapping portion of it. These things that I have mentioned, this you have to remember along with this point, and that is precisely it from in the terms of your prelims, and this will generally be associated with prelims. By the way, one more thing that I would like to highlight here is that the highest mountain in Europe, which is the highest mountain in Europe. Pause the video and mention it in the comment section. Okay, so that is Mount Elbrus. Very, very, very important. Please note it down. Mount Elbrus. It's actually a dormant stratovolcano. Stratovolcano, and it is a stratovolcano located in the Caucasus Mountains. Caucasus Mountains is located in the Caucasus Mountains in southern Russia. Southern Russia. And southern Russia also is associated. So, what all nations are associated with Caucasus Mountains? You have your Armenia, you have your uh, Azerbaijan, you have your Russia. Okay. So, all these are your Caucasus Mountains. Okay. And so in the southern part of Russia, you have this Caucasus Mountains, and here you have the highest peak of Europe, which is Mount Elbrus. It is you don't have to remember, just mentioning that it stands. This Elbrus stands at an elevation of 5,600 meters. So and is officially recognized as the highest of the famous seven summits. You don't need to remember this. Just remember this Elbrus. Okay. Moving forward. Now, what is the significance? What is the UNESCO nomination? Not much detailing that you need to remember over here. Since the topic was more around mapping portion, you just need to remember, read this. So it reflects a continuous religious legacy from ancient Greece, worship of Zeus through early Christian monasteries and chapels built on its slope. As Greece's first national park and a UNESCO biosphere reserve, it protects a unique flora, endemic species, and diverse wildlife across distinct altitude zones. The Enipeus Gorge, carved by glacial meltwaters, contains ancient caves and freshwater springs of geological importance. Okay, so this was about your cultural and ecological significance. Now, Greece has nominated Mount Olympus for the UNESCO World Heritage Site list as a mixed site. What is a mixed site? Which has both natural as well as cultural criteria. Okay, so this is why this was in news. And if we talk about India, what is the site which is a mixed site? UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is a mixed site. The only mixed site in India is Kanchenjunga. Okay, so Kanchenjunga is in Sikkim. The only mixed site under UNESCO World Heritage List of India is Kanchenjunga. Okay. So similarly, it is trying to include Mount Olympus. So currently under formal review by the World Heritage Committee, which is in Busan, South Korea. So mixed site we have already discussed. It recognizes both outstanding universal natural value and exceptional cultural. Both needs to be present, your natural value along with cultural or historical significance. So such a designation would place it among elite global sites like Machu Picchu, and a very, very famous site. You'd have to remember this. Machu Picchu. This is in Peru. and another is Mount Athos. This is in Greece. Okay, so they already have a mixed heritage site. Now they also want to include Mount Olympus, since it is also having cultural value, cultural significance. We have already seen Zeus and all. Okay, they're gods. Okay, you don't need to remember about the cultural significance, just that you need to remember the mapping portion of it. Beyond that, UPSC is not going to ask you anything. Second thing that you have to remember is the mixed heritage site of India. So getting inspired from this news, examiner might ask you a question on Kanchenjunga. Okay. So another thing that you have to remember here is highest peak in Western Europe, or let's say highest peak of Alps is also very important. Okay. This has been asked in multiple times in your state civil services exam. This is Mont Blanc. Okay, Mount Blanc. This is the highest mountain in Alps and Western Europe. The height is roughly around 4,800 meters, less than obviously Mount Olympus and all. But it is the highest peak in the Alps. Okay, soaring to 4,800 meters. So this is along French-Italian border. It is at the border, but mostly it is considered a part of France. Okay, though it is at the French-Italian border. Okay, so Mont Blanc, this is also important. You have to remember this. Okay, moving forward. So now this is the SOFI report. What is SOFI? State of food security and nutrition of the world. State of food security and nutrition of the world. So if we see here, the United Nations System's annual flagship report, it tracks progress towards SDG target 2.1. You have to remember this. And what are the different SDG targets? Okay. So one is regarding poverty. Second is regarding hunger. Okay. So similarly, all the SDG targets you have to remember. So SDG target 2.0 ending hunger and SDG target 2.2 eliminating all the forms of malnutrition. And also, one thing that I would like to also add here is that you can in mains you can use SDGs. One of the safest ways to conclude your answers, if let's say, because in mains you have a lot of paucity of time, and this is why what you require is that what you actually require is that you have to have certain ready-made conclusions. So here, one of the conclusions is through SDGs you can directly mention and move ahead with the next question. So SDGs you have to remember also not only from the point of view of the prelims, but also from the point of view of writing conclusions. Okay, and this in prelims what could be asked is who releases this report? SOFI report. So it is released by FAO, IFAD, UNICEF, World Food Program, World Health Organization. So not by one entity, but by multiple set of entities. So what was the theme? Understanding and addressing the highest cost of healthy diet. Evaluates, so what it evaluates is cost drivers of a healthy diet basket. HDB is healthy diet basket, and tracks the maternal and child nutrition globally. Okay, so sometimes themes are asked in your state civil services exam. Okay, if we look here, the graph, this is a global estimates point. What does the global estimate point? That there is a decrease in the world hunger. Okay, there is a decrease in the world hunger in recent years. So if you see here, this is the number of, this is the prevalence of undernourished, the left axis. Okay, and number of undernourished, which is the right axis. So here you can observe that from this point, both undernourished, both undernourished and uh, undernourishment and number of undernourishment, the both prevalence and as well as number, both has relatively decreased. Okay, coming back, you don't need to remember this graph as such, you just need to remember this point that there is a decrease in world hunger. Now if we talk about Africa, so Africa overtakes Asia. Now this is happening for the first time, and this is why this becomes important. So for the first time, Africa holds the largest population facing hunger, roughly around 30 crore people, which is around 20%, surpassing Asia's 292 million. So since in Asia, what we see is visibly, India has undertaken several measures, particularly under the PDS, public distribution system, which is why a lot of hunger related challenges have been effectively dealt because of this system, PDS. And other Indian subcontinent nations have tried to deal with a major problem of hunger. है ना? So this is why, uh, unlike the Indian subcontinent, Africa has been unable to deal with the challenge of hunger, and that is why the number has significantly rose and even surpassed Asia. है ना? The Asia. Okay. So unaffordability. 2.69 billion people. Oh my God. 32.7% globally. People cannot simply afford a healthy diet. In Africa, this figure rises to 66%. So 66% of the African people are unable to afford a healthy diet. Okay. Please do include these facts in your mains answers. Now, if we talk about nutrient dense cost gap, so animal sourced foods, you have your fruits, you have your vegetables account for nearly 70% of the total cost of a healthy diet, while starchy staples and all those things which contain starch, that contributes only 1/6, despite providing half the calories. Okay, so this is the nutrient dense cost gap. Okay, so at least, if nothing else, please try to include these 2 points in your mains answer, and this point, please do remember it from the point of view of your prelims. Very, very important. Okay, moving ahead. So what are some of the global findings? First, around 500 to 520 million people will still face chronic hunger. That's roughly around, that is 50, almost 50 crore people. More than 50 crore people will face chronic hunger, absolute hunger. Now this comprises of 56% Africa, making zero hunger. The target of zero hunger, SDG target 2 and SDG 3, is about zero hunger by 2030. Now this is highly unlikely that we are going to reach this target. Okay, so first thing, chronic hunger is a major issue. Only 30.8% of children 6 to 23 months and 62.7% of women achieved minimum dietary diversity globally. Okay, so the vulnerable section, particularly the women and children, still do not achieve, they still do not achieve that minimum diversity globally. Anemia, anemia, very, very important issue. Okay, anemia among women worsened to 30.7%, and if we talk about in India, that number is greater than 55%. I think it's roughly around 57, 58%. Please do check according to the latest NFHS report, NFHS 5 report. Read about the anemia data and please do include it in your answers. Okay. So anemia across the globe has worsened, while adult obesity climbed to 12% to 16.2% in 2024. So obesity is also rising. So you have both the challenges which are rising. At one point, at one side, you have obesity which is rising. At the other side, you have the chronic hunger that is rising. So both the challenges are there. As in, chronic hunger is not rising in absolute terms, but the sheer amount of people that are associated with chronic hunger, that is substantially high. As you can see, as you can visualize here, 510 to 520 people, 520 million people, those are associated with chronic hunger and not just acute hunger stress, chronic hunger. And rural food, and this is how food accessibility, nutrient, food which is nutrient rich, that is also inaccessible to certain rural areas, and this is why the rural food insecurity, remains consistently higher as compared to urban areas, despite observing that the rural sector is actually associated with agricultural activities. Still, if we talk about food insecurity across the world, the food insecurity is much, much higher in the rural areas as compared to the urban areas. So that is a fact. This is quite a unique fact contrary to the popular belief. Okay. If we talk about India's improvement drove Southern Asia. So India has played a major role in order to drive the South Asia's decline in undernourishment from 13.9% to 9.3% in 2025. So because of India, because of the efforts of India, we have been able to reduce the amount of undernourishment. Though not to say that undernourishment has completely vanished away in India. If we talk about in India, according to the recent data, roughly around 42, India has witnessed roughly around 42% decrease in undernourishment over the past 20 years. And around 12% but around 12% of India's population still remains undernourished. That is a huge number. So this crisis is heavily driven by what is the reason why 20% of India's population is undernourished. And the main reason is affordability, especially for the nutrient rich food. Okay, so affordability is a major reason with approximately 520 million people and over 40% of the population unable to afford regularly a healthy nutrient rich diet. Okay, so that number is also very high. India is almost close to 40% of the population and it is unable to afford a healthy nutrient rich diet daily. Okay, so there are issues of hidden hunger crisis. Hidden hunger crisis is very much prevalent in India. Whenever you are writing your answers, please do include this point. The crisis of hidden hunger crisis. So over 50% of the Indian women, 50% of Indian women, okay, suffer from anemia. Okay, the number is actually around 57%. I'm just giving you a rough estimate. And totaling more than 200 million individuals. So more than 20 crore women are associated with hidden hunger. They're associated with anemia. So this points to severe deficiencies in various essential micronutrients. What kind of micronutrients? If you talk about anemia, what kind of micronutrients are absent? Main is your iron, but not only iron, also your vitamins. Okay, iron mainly, but also your vitamins. Also, there are challenges related to intergenerational cycle. What I mean by this is undernourished mothers are more likely to give birth to low birth babies. Now, this perpetuates a cycle of poor health, diminished cognitive development, and lower economic productivity. So, those are some of the major challenges. Okay. So now, if we exclude India from the lower middle income group, that converts the regional affordability trend from a decrease to an increase. So India is essentially driving the affordability parts to a new low, which is a good thing. Okay. So repurpose, how is this? Subsidies. So repurpose subsidies away from staple monocropping towards fruits, vegetables, pulses, and legumes. So this is the suggestion. So instead of just providing subsidy, what we are right now doing, our majority subsidy goes towards rice, majority subsidy goes towards wheat, which in a way is okay in order to ensure food security. But in order to secure your nutrient security, you need to focus on fruit, you need to focus on vegetables, pulses, and legumes. But these kind of thing, your fruits and vegetables, your horticulture, these are very highly perishable. So what they will also require is investment in cold chain networks. Because if we talk about there was a data that almost close to 25% of the horticultural products that gets wasted in India. So you need to invest in cold chain networks. You need to invest in rural transport and processing facilities to cut the post-harvest losses. And the processing leads to value addition of the horticultural produce. Okay. So it will also lead to better income realization for the farmers. So moreover, what you also need to focus is strengthening the data collection. What kind of data? Cost of a healthy diet, COHD, and expand the nutrient sensitive cash transfers. Okay. You can work upon direct benefit transfer for nutrient-rich foods. What we are doing in anemia, how are we dealing with anemia? How are we dealing with the patients who are under TB? Okay, so for let's say if a person is under TB, so you have the Nikshay portal, and there the government is providing roughly around 500 per month. Why? So that the person is able to afford nutrient-rich diet in order to fight tuberculosis. So multiple set of ways India is actually promoting, this nutrient sensitive cash transfers. How much that is realized at the ground level, then that is a matter of debate. Okay. Next important discussion is around the Rome Declaration for an unarmed and disarming peace. What it is, firstly, it was signed at Rome's Capitoline Hill by Nobel laureates, AI scientists, religious. So you have AI scientists along with the religious leaders and former head of state. So this declaration is inspired by Pope Leo XIV's Magnificat Humanitas. Okay, you don't need to go into this. Check. So core, what is it about? It is about a warning that AI controlled nuclear systems. So if you have nuclear systems which are AI controlled, now that poses an existential risk. How so? Because the algorithms, they lack that morality, they lack the empathy, they lack the judgment, and must never ever replace the human decision making in the nuclear launch authority. So this is the core warning that you should not allow the artificial intelligence to replace human decision making in such nuclear launch authorities. Okay, so if we talk about six general principles, so disarming the next AI nuclear arms race, first, responsible development, responsible use of artificial intelligence, responsible governance, responsible leadership, and nuclear disarmament. So these are some of the six general principles. Mandatory human control. Okay, absolutely bars on automated or AI driven platforms from executing a final nuclear launch decisions. Absolutely, they should be done. 100% agreement. Next is digital commons model. So you need to expand the open data access so that independent global experts can evaluate the ungoverned AI risk. This is why you need to have that open data access. This should be there, especially protecting the non-tech dominant nations. Okay, so this is the digital commons model. Another thing that you must write while writing an answer is the vulnerability audits. Okay, so what it is? So if you have the nuclear armed states urged to conduct the rigorous technical reviews to protect command and control system for AI data poisoning, AI hallucinations, or cyber tampering. Try to include these kind of cool jargons in your answer. That will make your answers way different from others. Okay. So all in all, one thing that you have to remember this for your mains. Okay. So what it is, this point for your prelims. And that is precisely it. Okay. So now moving on. Rome Declaration. Why is it necessary and what should be the way forward? First of all, it talks about compressed decisions. Okay, compressed decision windows. So modern AI logistics, they reduce the nuclear response windows from hours to mere seconds, and this is why this becomes very important. Now this removes the safety valve for human moral pause. Okay. I'm sure you, if you have read about, please do read about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Then you will come to better appreciate this fact why we require a safety valve of human moral pause. Okay, algorithmic failure modes. So deep neural networks, what they suffer from is the black box opacity. They suffer from data poisoning and even data hallucinations. A certain misinterpreted ping could trigger catastrophic automated retaliation. So this is why what you require is algorithmic failure modes are needed. Next is Next important issue is the erosion of arms treaty. So you have your legacy agreements like your INF, like your New START treaty. All those have weakened. And this is creating pressure on the states to automate the defenses for algorithmic speed advantage. So whenever you have war, the speed becomes very crucial, and this is why certain nations like the US are pushing towards algorithmic speed advantage, that even in case of a nuclear missiles, or in case of any nuclear thing, automatically this will get activated under certain conditions. So what you will miss is that time pause, that safety valve of human moral pause, that is actually required in order to save millions of lives. Okay, and this is particularly witnessed since the legacy agreement, INF New Start. So, if I can say, in 1987, so intermediate, you have your intermediate range, intermediate range nuclear forces INF treaty, which bans the ground launches of the intermediate missiles. And this is no longer in effect. The US withdrew from it in back in 2019, and Russia formally withdrew it in 2025, citing that US global missile deployments. So Russia also, in 2025, you don't have any such INF treaty anymore between two major powers, your Russia and US. Okay. Another thing is the New START treaty. So New START treaty, the last remaining bilateral nuclear limit that officially expired. So this New START treaty, this got expired in 2010-26, ending the legal caps and mutual inspection. Okay, so this is also now no more. Now you have another major challenge is, why is it necessary, is because pre-delegation risk. So states may pre-delegate the firing authority to an automated software, fearing that human command structure will be outpaced or jammed. So this is why, what the nations are striving for is again the algorithmic speed advantage. Okay, so automatically the missiles would be fired. Nuclear attack will be started automatically by an algorithm of AI. Okay, so this is why it is very important that you need to require such kind of human Rome declaration. So what are the challenges and way forward? One is that, first of all, there is one challenge is there is a lack of global consensus. Major military power resists these binding treaties, limiting the autonomous capabilities during active conflict. So there is no global consensus. Second is verifiability. Okay, so AI algorithms, these algorithms are easily hidden, and these are easily duplicated and making verification very hard than tracking physical nuclear materials. So this is why the verifiability, this is the first challenge, lack of global consensus. Second is, how will you verify it? Third is your binding law, transitioning the declaration into a UN-backed treaty targeting launch on warning automation. Okay, so you need to have human in the loop. So this should be mandated in the architecture across all the strategic military command networks globally. So you need to include human. Why? Because because of that moral pause. Sovereign cyber audits. Okay, as we have already discussed this, and you need to undertake certain vulnerability audits. So you must force the nuclear states to separate the strategic software from unverified commercial cloud architecture. So these are the measures that are needed in order for you to make the declaration more effective. Okay, all this you can include in your mains discussion, and even if there is a question on essay. Moving forward, So now the first ever mixed disability Ashes happened in 2020. So why this is important? This is the first time this has ever happened. So this is the inaugural first time bilateral Ashes cricket series. You know, Ashes, if you are a cricket fan, then you must be knowing that it happens between England and Australia, featuring mixed disability men's team, extending cricket's most iconic rivalry to elite cricketers with disabilities. Okay. So when and where to be hosted in England in 2027. This will be played alongside the men's and women's Ashes, making all the three Ashes format part of the same historic season. So a kind of an inclusive event. Format is contested in the T20 international format, venues and detailed schedule to be announced by England and Wales Cricket Board. Inclusive milestone. Certainly, it is an inclusive milestone. So this builds on England's existing bilateral disability cricket series with India, expanding the international calendar for mixed disability cricket globally. The aim again is to strengthen the inclusive sports. And moreover, apart from inclusive sports, we provide elite international competition for cricketers with disabilities. Integrate disability cricket into the mainstream global cricket institutional framework. Okay? So the main idea is inclusivity. So this is the main idea. So if you have any answer, if you are writing any answers on inclusivity, you can always use this as an example. And for prelims point of view, this point that you have to remember, that Ashes happen between which nations and when and where is the event going to happen. So this kind of thing could be asked in your prelims, and rest of the things you can remember for your mains point of view. So what is the significance? You are bringing equality in sports, providing elite athletes with disabilities the opportunity to compete in cricket's most prestigious rivalry, advancing equality and breaking participation barriers. So first point is you are bringing equality in sports. Second is institutional growth. So you are strengthening the institutional framework of disability cricket and encouraging greater investment, visibility part, and international calendar expansion. Okay. So you can use it in social justice answers whenever you have question on social justice, whenever you have a question on persons with disabilities, governmental policies for empowerment of vulnerable sections of society, and even in essays. So whenever you have an essay topic on inclusive development or sports for social inclusion or empowerment through sports, so these are some of the key themes which could be asked, and you can directly include this point. And by the way, India is home. If we talk about India, India is home to roughly around 26 million people or persons with disabilities. Accounting this number accounts for roughly around 2% of the total population of India. Okay, so this is why a famous act that you must remember, Rights of Persons with Disability Act. Rights of Persons with Disability. Very, very important. So this act recognizes 21 conditions expanding from previous laws. So there are 21 conditions under which you can be categorized as disabled. Okay. So now more inclusive term, and instead of disabled, uh, uh, what we are using is Divyangjans rather than using that these are persons with disabilities or these are Divyangjans. So despite improvements in legal frameworks, people with disabilities continue to face significant systematic barriers in daily life, in education, and worst thing, that is in employment also. So this is why this news becomes very important. Moving forward, a last topic of discussion is Borofin. It is India's tribological breakthrough. Okay. So first of all, what is Borofin? So it's an ultra thin two-dimensional crystalline allotrope of boron. A single atom thick layer of boron atoms. Essentially, the boron equivalent of graphene, with exceptional mechanical strength. So you have exceptional mechanical strength you have flexibility apart from strength, and a good electronic conductivity. All these features you can safely apply in different sections in different industries. So first of all, I'm sure you must be well aware of the term allotrope. Allotrope. You must have read it in science NCRTs. So allotrope is different structural form of same chemical element. It is a different. What is different? Structural form. The structural form is different of the same chemical element in the same physical state, be it solid, liquid, or gas. Now, because their atoms are bonded in different arrangements, you have different structural form. So essentially what it means is the atoms are bonded in different arrangements. Allotropes exhibit distinct physical and chemical properties. Okay, so despite having the same chemical element, because the structural forms are different, they exhibit different kinds of physical and chemical properties. One of the most common example of an allotrope is, if we talk about carbon. Carbon has well known several allotropes, including, so some of the allotropes you must remember is diamond. What is diamond? 3D rigid lattice. 3D rigid lattice, making it, because of its structural form, making it the hardest material. Or another is you have graphite. Graphite. But graphite is very soft. Okay, why it is soft? It is layered sheets. It is layered sheets of carbon atoms. Other carbon allotropes are your graphene and fullerenes. Fullerenes. Fullerenes are like your buckyballs. I'm sure you can see the image of fullerene. It is like a buckyball. Okay. So coming back to the discussion, context, what is the news? Scientists at IASST Guwahati achieved a breakthrough using borofin as a biolubricant additive. So it is used as a biolubricant additive in castor oil, significantly reducing friction and surface roughness. Okay. Synthesis, unlike graphene, which is exfoliated from graphite. So graphene is exfoliated from graphite. Okay. Borofin does not exist naturally and must be synthesized via chemical vapor deposition or molecular beam epitaxy and a MBE on metallic substrates, like substrate the surface on silver, like your silver, gold, copper, under ultra high vacuum conditions. Okay, so if let's say the examiner wants to confuse you, one is this news which is important. First thing, okay, you need to remember what it is exactly. It's a single atom thick layer of boron atoms, and like essentially the boron equivalent, just like your graphene. So you have borofene. Okay. Third thing that you need to remember is that it does not exist naturally. If the UPSC examiner wants to frame a question, it will certainly use this fact. It would say that it is one of the allotropes which exist naturally, but it is actually synthesized. Okay. Next is anisotropic properties. What is anisotropic properties? That it is direction dependent. It is direction dependent. You have direction dependent mechanical, thermal, and electrical properties. Why? Due to its asymmetric atomic lattice. Okay. Unlike the isotropic structures of graphene. So this is how this is different from graphene. Okay. Graphene is not, graphene is isotropic, whereas borofin is anisotropic. Isotropic, you have symmetrical atomic lattice. Okay, so this is why when you have symmetry, you can go in any direction. So that becomes direction independent. Okay, so graphene, if you talk about, that is direction independent. Why direction independent? Because you have similarity across all the direction. Whereas borofene, this is showing anisotropic properties. Next is metallic conductivity. So unlike bulk boron, which is a semiconductor, borofene behaves as a fully metallic conductor with high thermal conductivity. So these are some of the points that could be directly, indirectly asked in your prelims. Okay. So Borophene, key features, we have already discussed this. Ultra high tensile strength and high young modulus. Okay. With flexibility, despite high strength, the flexibility is also very superior and much more superior as compared to graphene. Okay. Superior tribological capacity. Okay, so it forms durable protective tribofilms during mechanical shear, significantly reducing surface roughness and friction. And this you have to remember. Okay, so this is why it was added in castor oil. Castor oil. Okay, high chemical reactivity. This we have already discussed. High chemical reactivity. So electron deficient nature allows uniform dispersion in organic fluids like castor oil without requiring the surface modification. So where exactly a lot of UPSC questions and civil services questions are centered, science and tech questions are centered around application part. So where exactly it is used, first and foremost thing, very important that you have to remember is the biolubricants. So it was added in castor oil. Why? To reduce the industrial machinery and marine transport friction. Now, if you reduce the friction, the efficiency will substantially increase, and if the efficiency increases, the energy consumption will substantially reduce. So friction leads to higher efficiency, and higher efficiency leads to lower energy consumption. Okay, friction reduced, efficiency increased, and energy reduced. Next aspect is energy storage. So high capacity and fast ion transport make Borophene ideal for next generation batteries and supercapacitors and hydrogen storage systems. And it positions India at the frontier of the advanced nanomaterial research with direct industrial and clean energy applications. So these are some of the key applications that you can remember. Okay. So I hope you liked today's discussion. If you have any doubts regarding today, please do mention it in the comment section itself. Okay then, thank you very much.